The alarm sounds at 7. You've slept 8 hours, maybe 10. The mattress is soft, the room is quiet. The world outside hasn't asked anything of you yet, but when you open your eyes, there's a heaviness that has nothing to do with sleep. It sits in your chest like wet sand, making each breath feel like effort. Your body hasn't moved, but you're already exhausted. You stare at the ceiling. The day ahead unfolds in your mind like a list written in a language you no longer speak. Shower, coffee, messages to answer, meetings to attend, conversations where you'll need to smile, to nod, to pretend that existing doesn't feel like carrying stones up an endless hill. None of these tasks are extraordinary. None of them should require courage, and yet. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. The floor is cool against your feet. This simple act, standing up, feels like a small victory and a profound defeat all at once. You wonder, as you have wondered every morning for months or maybe years, why this is so hard. Why other people seem to move through their days like fish through water, while you drag yourself forward like something wounded. In the bathroom mirror, you look the same as yesterday. The same face, the same eyes. But behind them, something essential has dimmed. You brush your teeth with mechanical precision, each motion requiring a conscious decision. Toothbrush up, water on. Spit. Rinse. These actions that should be automatic have become a sequence you must manually execute, as if someone removed the batteries from the part of you that used to do things without thinking. Your phone screen glows with notifications, 12 messages, 3 emails marked urgent, a calendar reminder for something you agreed to weeks ago, when you had more faith in your future self. You set the phone face down on the counter. The thought of responding, of assembling words into sentences that sound like a person who is fine, who is present, who has energy to spare for other people's needs, makes you want to crawl back into bed and stay there until the world forgets you exist. But you won't. You never do. Because this is the strange thing about this kind of tired. You still function. You still show up. You still laugh at jokes and meet deadlines and ask how people's weekends were. From the outside, you look like someone who has their life together, maybe even someone who's doing well. And this makes the exhaustion lonelier, because how do you explain to someone that you're drowning in 2 feet of water, that you're collapsing under the weight of a life that looks, from any reasonable angle, perfectly manageable? This tiredness doesn't need more sleep. It doesn't need vitamins or exercise or a better morning routine, because it doesn't live in your muscles or your bloodstream. It lives somewhere deeper, in a place that rest cannot reach. This is the fatigue of a soul that has been holding its breath for so long, it has forgotten what it feels like to exhale. There is a mathematics to physical tiredness that makes sense. Run a marathon, feel depleted, work a double shift, need sleep, stay up all night, pay the price the next day. The equation is simple. The solution is rest. But this tiredness you carry operates by different laws. You can sleep for 12 hours and wake up more exhausted than when you closed your eyes. You can take a vacation and spend the entire time feeling guilty for not feeling rejuvenated. You can do nothing all weekend and return to Monday more depleted than if you'd climbed a mountain. The world has a word for what it thinks you are: lazy, unmotivated, lacking discipline. You've heard these words from others, and worse, you've whispered them to yourself in the dark hours when you can't understand why everyone else seems to find living so much easier than you do. But here is the truth that needs to be spoken clearly. You are not lazy. A lazy person feels relief when they avoid responsibility. They feel pleasure in doing nothing. You feel neither of these things. When you cancel plans, you don't feel free. You feel shame. When you spend an evening motionless on the couch, you don't feel rested. You feel the weight of all the things you should be doing, pressing down on your chest like a physical force. When you finally force yourself to complete a task, you don't feel accomplished. You feel briefly less terrible, and then immediately exhausted by the thought of the next thing waiting in line. This is not laziness. This is burnout. This is a nervous system that has been running on emergency power for so long, it has started to shut down non-essential functions to survive. And the most dangerous part is how well you hide it. You've become an expert at performance. At work, you're competent, maybe even excellent. You meet your deadlines. You contribute in meetings. You respond to emails with the appropriate tone of professional enthusiasm. To your friends, you're the one who still shows up, still laughs at the right moments, still asks about their lives with what appears to be genuine interest. You've learned to wear your energy like a costume, putting it on each morning and taking it off the moment you're alone. This is the peculiar isolation of high-functioning exhaustion. Because you look fine, people assume you are fine. Because you can still perform the basic rituals of normalcy, no one sees the extraordinary effort each ritual requires. You're like a phone displaying 100% battery while running on the last 2% of reserve power, the system lying to everyone, including itself, about how close it is to complete shutdown. No one teaches you the difference between being tired and being empty. Physical fatigue has symptoms everyone recognizes: yawning, heavy eyelids, slower movements. But soul exhaustion looks different. It looks like staring at a text message for 20 minutes, trying to find the energy to type 3 words. It looks like sitting in your car in the parking lot after work, unable to gather the will to drive home. It looks like opening the refrigerator, staring at food, and closing it again because the thought of deciding what to eat, preparing it, chewing it, cleaning up after it, feels like too many steps in a process you don't have the bandwidth to complete. It looks like crying in the shower, not because something terrible happened, but because nothing happened, and you still feel this heavy, and you don't know how to explain to anyone that the weight of an ordinary life has become unbearable. It looks like lying in bed at 3 in the morning, exhausted but unable to sleep, your mind cycling through every unfinished task and unresolved worry like a computer that can't shut down, because too many programs are still running in the background. This is not weakness. This is not failure. This is what happens when a human being has been operating beyond their capacity for too long, when they've been spending energy they don't have, borrowing from reserves that have long since run dry. There is a part of your nervous system that you've probably never thought about. A network of nerve fibers that runs from your brainstem down through your body like the root system of a tree. Scientists call it the vagus nerve, and it has one job: to keep you alive. When everything else fails, when your body can no longer fight and can no longer flee, this system activates a final protocol. It shuts you down, not completely, not like death, but like a computer switching to safe mode, disabling all non-essential functions to preserve the core. Your emotions dim. Your motivation evaporates. Your body moves slower. Your thoughts become foggy. This isn't depression exactly, though it often gets mistaken for it. This is your nervous system making a brutal calculation. If you keep going at this pace, you will break completely. So I'm going to break you partially now, in a controlled way, to save what's left. They call this dorsal vagal shutdown. And it happens when stress stops being an event and becomes a climate. When you've spent months or years in a state of low-grade emergency, your body eventually stops producing adrenaline and starts producing numbness instead. You don't feel panicked anymore. You don't feel much of anything. You feel like you're watching your life through a thick pane of glass, present but not participating, alive but not living. And the exhaustion that comes with this state is unlike any tiredness you've known, because it's not your muscles that are tired. It's your will to exist that is worn thin. But this is only part of the story. There's another kind of fatigue happening simultaneously, one that has to do with the person you pretend to be versus the person you actually are. Every morning, you put on a mask, not a literal one, but a persona, a version of yourself that is appropriate for public consumption. This version smiles more than you feel like smiling. It laughs at jokes that aren't funny. It says, "I'm good. How are you?" when someone asks, even though the honest answer would take hours to explain and would make everyone uncomfortable. Psychologists call this emotional labor, and it costs more than most people realize. Imagine carrying a 50-pound rock, but having to pretend it's as light as a feather. Imagine being in pain, but having to act like you feel fine. Imagine being terrified, but having to project confidence. Now imagine doing this for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, month after month, year after year. The energy required to maintain this gap between your inner reality and your outer presentation is staggering. It's like running 2 operating systems simultaneously, one for yourself and one for everyone else. And the constant switching between them drains your battery faster than any actual work you do. And then there are the loops, the open loops, the unfinished business your mind can't let go of. That conversation you had 3 years ago where you said the wrong thing and never got to correct it. The decision you need to make but keep postponing. The relationship that ended without closure. The dream you abandoned but never properly mourned. These things don't go away just because you stop thinking about them consciously. They run in the background of your mind like programs you forgot to close, consuming processing power even while you sleep. Picture your consciousness as a computer with 50 browser tabs open. Each tab is loading something. One is playing a video of every embarrassing thing you've ever done. Another is running calculations about whether you'll have enough money to retire. Another is replaying that text message you sent that never got a response. Another is generating hypothetical conversations you might need to have. Another is maintaining a running list of everything you're supposed to remember to do. You're not actively looking at any of these tabs, but they're all running, all consuming energy, all generating heat, all slowing down the entire system. This is why you wake up tired. This is why sleep doesn't help, because your mind never actually rests. Even in dreams, it's processing, sorting, trying to make sense of the accumulated weight of unresolved experiences. And each morning, you add more tabs to the collection, more unfinished loops, more things to worry about, more emotional labor to perform, until the system is so overloaded that the simplest tasks become monumental efforts. And there's another layer still, the layer of choice. Every day you make thousands of tiny decisions: what to wear, what to eat, which route to take to work, how to respond to this email, whether to accept this invitation, which task to do first. For most people, most of these decisions happen automatically, guided by habit and preference. But for you, especially if you're the type of person who overthinks, who sees multiple possibilities in every situation, who worries about making the wrong choice, each decision becomes a small battle. Should you have the salad or the sandwich? Well, the salad is healthier, but you had salad yesterday and you're trying to eat more variety. But the sandwich has a lot of carbs and you're trying to have more energy. But carbs might make you sleepy, and you don't want to be sleepy for the afternoon meeting. But maybe the protein in the sandwich would actually help. But there's also the question of cost and whether you should be saving money by bringing lunch from home. Except you didn't have time this morning, which means you're already failing at meal planning, which is part of a larger pattern of not having your life together. This is what happens inside your head over a lunch decision. Now, multiply this by every choice you face in a day. The cumulative weight of decision fatigue is enormous, and it compounds with everything else: the emotional labor and the open loops and the nervous system shutdown, creating a perfect storm of depletion that no amount of sleep can fix. And for some people, there's something else underneath all of this, something that's been there so long it feels like part of the landscape of their inner world. It's called dysthymia, a form of chronic low-grade depression that doesn't knock you off your feet, but does drain all the color from your experience of living. It's not the dramatic darkness of major depression. It's more like a gray filter placed over everything, making joy feel muted, making pleasure feel distant, making the entire enterprise of being alive feel like more trouble than it's worth. You can have dysthymia for years, even decades, without realizing it, because it doesn't feel like an illness. It feels like reality. It feels like this is just how life is, just how you are, just the baseline state of existence. Other people seem to find things exciting or meaningful or worth getting out of bed for. And you wonder what's wrong with you that you don't feel those things, or feel them only faintly, like hearing music from another room. And the exhaustion that comes with this is existential. It's not that your body is tired. It's that your soul is tired of working so hard to feel things that other people seem to feel effortlessly. Tired of pretending to care about things you don't care about. Tired of going through the motions of a life that feels like it's happening to someone else. Tired of waiting for the moment when everything clicks into place and suddenly makes sense. A moment that never comes. You're tired of being tired. Tired of explaining that you're tired. Tired of people suggesting solutions that don't address the problem because they don't understand that the problem isn't lack of sleep or lack of exercise or lack of positive thinking. The problem is that you've been running on empty for so long that empty has started to feel normal, and you've forgotten what it feels like to have actual energy, actual enthusiasm, actual desire for the future. This is the landscape of soul exhaustion, multiple systems failing simultaneously, each one making the others worse, creating a downward spiral that's invisible to everyone, including yourself. You didn't choose this. You didn't fail at some crucial life task that would have prevented it. You simply lived in a world that asked more of you than you had to give, and you gave it anyway, and kept giving until there was nothing left to give, and then you kept going anyway because stopping felt like admitting defeat. But what if the exhaustion isn't the enemy? What if it's a messenger arriving with information you've been refusing to hear? Your body doesn't speak in words, it speaks in sensations, in symptoms, in the language of fatigue and pain and restlessness. And right now, it's screaming something at you that you've been trying to ignore by pushing through, by trying harder, by telling yourself that you just need to be stronger, or more disciplined, or more resilient. But strength isn't what's required here. Listening is what's required. The exhaustion is telling you something is wrong. Not wrong with you, but wrong with how you're living. Maybe it's the job that requires you to perform a version of yourself that has nothing to do with who you actually are. Maybe it's the relationship where you do all the emotional labor and receive none of the emotional nourishment. Maybe it's the pace you've been maintaining, the constant productivity, the endless optimization, the belief that rest is something you earn rather than something you need to function. Think of fatigue as your system's emergency brake. You've been driving too fast for too long on a road that's heading toward a cliff, and your body, in its wisdom, has pulled the brake to stop you from going over the edge. The exhaustion isn't the problem. The exhaustion is the solution to a problem you haven't fully acknowledged yet. It's forcing you to stop, to slow down, to recognize that the way you've been living is unsustainable. And here's the reframing that changes everything. Rest is not a reward for productivity. Rest is not something you get to do after you've finished all your work. Rest is the foundation that makes work possible. You don't fill your car with gas after you've reached your destination. You fill it before you leave, and you fill it again along the way, because running out of fuel in the middle of the highway isn't noble or admirable. It's just poor planning. You've been treating your energy like it's infinite, like you can keep withdrawing from an account without making deposits, and now you're surprised that you're overdrawn. But energy doesn't work that way. Willpower doesn't work that way. The human nervous system doesn't work that way. There are limits, and you've been living beyond yours for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to operate within them. The exhaustion is asking you to make different choices, to say no to things that drain you, to stop performing for people who don't actually see you, to let some balls drop because you were never supposed to be juggling that many in the first place, to recognize that the version of productivity the world sold you, the idea that you should be constantly optimizing and improving and achieving, is a trap designed to extract maximum value from you, while giving you minimum peace. There's a reason you feel tired all the time, and it's not because you're broken. It's because you're trying to be a human being in a world that wants you to be a machine. Machines don't need rest. Machines don't have emotions. Machines don't require meaning or purpose or connection. They just run until they break, and then they get replaced. But you're not a machine. You're a living organism with needs that go beyond food and sleep and shelter. You need beauty. You need silence. You need time that isn't measured in productivity. You need space to exist without purpose. And the exhaustion, this deep soul-level fatigue, is your body's way of saying it can't keep pretending anymore. It can't keep maintaining the performance. It can't keep suppressing its needs in service of external demands. It's tired of being strong when what it needs is to be soft. It's tired of being productive when what it needs is to be still. It's tired of being fine when what it actually is falling apart. So maybe instead of fighting the exhaustion, instead of seeing it as something to overcome or power through, you could try listening to it. You could ask it what it needs. You could treat it not as a weakness to be ashamed of, but as information to be respected. Because the exhaustion knows something you don't want to admit. That the life you're living isn't working. That something has to change. And that change begins with the radical act of allowing yourself to stop. Healing from soul exhaustion doesn't happen the way you think it does. It doesn't happen by sleeping more, or taking a vacation, or finally getting through your to-do list. It happens by understanding that rest is not one thing. It's 7 different things, and you've probably been neglecting most of them. Physical rest is the obvious one, the one everyone thinks of first. Sleep, naps, lying down. And yes, your body needs this. But if you've been sleeping 8 or 10 or 12 hours and still waking up exhausted, it's because physical rest alone isn't enough. Your body might be still, but your senses are still working, still processing, still being bombarded by information. This is where sensory rest comes in. The kind of rest that happens when you stop asking your nervous system to process input. No screens, no music, no podcasts playing in the background while you cook dinner. No scrolling through your phone in bed. Just silence. Just darkness or soft natural light. Just the absence of stimulation. Your brain processes thousands of pieces of sensory data every second, and it never gets a break unless you deliberately give it one. Sit in a quiet room for 20 minutes with nothing to do, and notice what happens. At first, you'll feel uncomfortable, restless, like you should be doing something. This discomfort is withdrawal. You've been using constant stimulation to avoid being alone with yourself. And now that you've removed the noise, you have to face what's underneath it. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can let your nervous system finally rest from its constant work of filtering and processing and responding, something in you begins to settle. Then there's emotional rest, which is perhaps the most important and most neglected of all. Emotional rest happens when you stop performing, when you find a person or a place where you don't have to manage how you're perceived, where you can say, "I'm not okay," without having to immediately follow it with reassurance that you'll be fine, where you can be tired without being inspiring, where you can be struggling without being strong. For most people, there is no such place. Every relationship requires some degree of emotional performance. At work, you have to be professional. With friends, you have to be fun or interesting, or at least not too much of a burden. With family, you have to navigate old dynamics and unspoken expectations. Even alone, you perform for yourself, maintaining an internal narrative about who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to feel. But emotional rest requires letting all of that go, even if just for an hour, even if just with one person, even if just in the privacy of a journal where no one will ever read what you write. And it requires something even harder, stopping the compulsive need to make other people comfortable, the people-pleasing, the automatic yes when you mean no, the laughing at jokes that aren't funny, the pretending to be interested in conversations that bore you, the taking on of other people's emotions as if they're your responsibility to manage. Every time you do this, you spend energy you don't have. Every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own truth, you move further away from rest. For one day, try this. Don't manage anyone's emotions but your own. Don't laugh if it's not funny. Don't say you're fine if you're not. Don't agree to things you don't want to do. Notice how much energy this gives back to you, and notice how much of your exhaustion has been coming from the constant work of being someone other than who you are. Then there's creative rest, though the word creative is misleading. This isn't about making art. This is about receiving beauty, about letting yourself be filled rather than constantly emptying yourself out. It's about standing in front of something beautiful, a sunset or a painting or a tree in autumn, and doing nothing but looking at it. It's about listening to music that moves you without doing anything else simultaneously. It's about reading poetry slowly. It's about walking through a park and noticing the way light falls through leaves. Your soul needs beauty the way your body needs water. Not productivity, not achievement, not information. Beauty. The kind that serves no purpose except to remind you that there are things in this world worth being alive for. Things that don't ask anything of you, except that you notice them. In a life that has become all function and no form, all output and no input, beauty is the antidote. It fills the well that exhaustion has drained. And this means you have to audit your life for what drains you and what fills you. Not theoretically, but actually. Who are the people who leave you feeling more tired after you see them? What are the obligations that exist only because you've never had the courage to say no? What parts of your daily routine are there out of habit rather than necessity? What would you stop doing if you gave yourself permission? You've probably been told that you need better boundaries, and that's true, but boundaries aren't just about saying no to other people. They're about saying no to the voice in your head that insists you should be able to handle more than you can handle. That voice that tells you rest is laziness, that needing help is weakness, that struggling means you're failing. That voice is not your friend. That voice is the internalized expectations of a world that benefits from your exhaustion. And then there's the hardest kind of rest. The rest that comes from doing something for no reason except that it makes you feel alive. Not productive, not useful, just alive. This is what they call flow, the state where you're so absorbed in something that time disappears, where you're not thinking about the past or the future or what anyone thinks of you. You're just present, just doing, just being. For some people, this is painting or playing music or writing. For others, it's gardening or cooking or working with their hands. For others still, it's movement, dancing or running or climbing. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's yours, that it exists outside the economy of productivity, that it asks nothing of you except that you show up and let yourself be absorbed. There's a tree outside your window maybe, or in a park you pass on the way to work. In winter it loses its leaves. The branches become bare, dark lines against a gray sky. To someone who didn't understand seasons, this tree would look dead. It would look like failure, like something that gave up. But the tree isn't dead, it's resting. Underground, where no one can see, the roots are doing their work. The tree has pulled all its energy inward, away from the branches and leaves, down into the core where life is preserved and strengthened. It looks like nothing is happening, but everything is happening. The tree is preparing, healing, gathering what it needs for the spring that will eventually come. You are in winter right now. You've lost your leaves, your branches are bare. From the outside, and maybe even from the inside, it looks like you're failing, like you're less than you used to be, like something essential has been lost. But you're not dying. You're dormant. You're in the season where growth happens invisibly, where the work is all internal, where the measure of health isn't what you produce but whether you survive. And survival, right now, is enough. Getting out of bed is enough. Drinking water is enough. Moving through one day and then another is enough. You don't need to be flowering. You don't need to be reaching toward the sun with green abundant growth. You just need to let your roots go deeper. Let yourself rest in the dark soil of this moment and trust that this season, like all seasons, will not last forever. The world will tell you that winter is a problem to be solved, that dormancy is a deficit to be overcome, that you should be growing and producing regardless of what your system is telling you it needs. But the world is wrong. Winter is not a failure of spring. It's a necessary part of the cycle, and you cannot force a tree to bloom in January no matter how much you want to see flowers. So let yourself be leafless for a while. Let yourself do nothing without guilt. Let yourself rest without earning it. Let the exhaustion be what it is, not a moral failure, but a biological necessity. Your body's way of saying it needs to go underground for a season to remember how to live. The spring will come, but first, you have to survive the winter. And survival begins with the radical permission to stop pretending you're not tired and finally, let yourself rest.